Hello and welcome with new hair, new glasses, and a new background. Today I want to talk about A Journal of the Plague Year by Daniel Defoe. It is a first-person narrative told by the protagonist H.F. assigned in the end of his work. The journal is a tale of experiences during the plague that afflicted London in 1665. The work is filled with statistics, data, and government documents, which led me to believe that it's actually not fiction. I did a little research on this and found articles claiming that it is fiction because Daniel Defoe was only 5 years old when the plague happened, while others claimed that H.F. is probably Henry Foe, who is Daniel's uncle. If anyone's done some more research on the plague and can tell me whether the statistics are correct and the data, and everything mentioned in this book, if it's really accurate, I would really love to know. I read this book during lockdown earlier this year, and let me tell you, it was pure tragedy. I read this along with The Stand by Stephen King, which, you guessed it, is about a plague too. And those two books are not something you'd like to read during a pandemic. Okay, back to the plague year. H.F. is a saddler who lives in East London. In September of 1664, rumors reported that the plague had reached Holland, but the first victims in England were only confirmed in November. H.F. also notes the increase in weekly burials among the English cemeteries in the following year. His brother encourages him to go to the country, and he is reluctant. It's a big dilemma, like save yourself from the plague or stay here and die. But our protagonist stays behind because he feels that God wants him to stay and die there. He tracks the plague's movement among parishes and notes that it affects the poor disproportionately. And of course that's something we already know, today. Who else is going to be affected by a disaster more than the low-income households? And epidemics and pandemics are natural disasters. H.F. describes how many people are prohibited from working in an effort to suppress the plague. And as time went by, the population grew more superstitious for some reason, so people started wearing amulets to try and guard against the sickness, because amulets cure. This is a very sad situation. When doctors don't know what to do, people try to find other means to help themselves. So, legislation also passed that mandated things as notifying the public when a household was sick, and that was done by putting a sign outside their door. The plague was most likely spread by movement of people and goods. People aiming to escape the plague in the city likely carried the plague with them. But isn't that what happened now too? People are trying to escape from the cities to get away from the coronavirus, but ended up transmitting it to people who weren't as exposed in the first place. I guess we never learn, do we? It happened in 1665 and it happened in 2020. This is sad. Let's drink some coffee that makes me awesome. Back to superstition and the like. H.F. is convinced that the plague came from God, just as many would argue about the coronavirus. Am I wrong? Anyway, the plague abated in the following winter, and those left alive returned to their routines, as people always do after they recover from a tragedy. They moved on and they quickly settled back into their normal lives and routines. This was a very difficult book to read. As I mentioned earlier, I read this during lockdown and it took a toll on me. Reading news about the outbreak and people being hospitalized, and then one night I decided to relax before I go to bed. I took a book, A Journal of the Plague Year, and now I'm thinking, what was I thinking? Anyways, I read the first 2 chapters and I thought my heart would just stop immediately to prevent me from going deeper into the plague story. After that night, I couldn't bring myself to read anymore, so I started another book, which I had read an interview by Stephen King saying that The Stand was him trying to write an adventure similar to The Lord of the Rings, but it ended being a story about a pandemic that swiped out, I think, 99% of the population. So I put that aside too. And then I came back to both books after a while when I managed to control my emotions. And the books didn't get to me as much as they did the first time when I started them. I believe that A Journal of the Plague Year is a must read. Everyone should read this book. Whether you're a fan of history or not, this book is something you need to read. So we could finally stop making the same mistakes, like fleeing cities out of fear of contraction and then spreading the virus to the rest of the country. Or maybe we could learn to help the poor more. That's something we could also take from this book. Of course, this is a very sensitive topic, and if you're not interested in finding out what happened in the 1600s, books like this are very important in finding out what not to do during a crisis. Most of all, the very last thing one takes from this book is that life goes on. No matter what tragedy may come to humankind or to individuals, the truth is it will also go away eventually, and we will continue living. I told you this is a very sensitive topic, especially with the ongoing pandemic. Is a very difficult book to read, so when the coronavirus is gone, read this book. This video gets 4 likes. I will review The Stand by Stephen King. I promise. Go ahead and like this video if you like this video, and don't forget to subscribe for more book reviews. Bye bye!